Welcome back everyone. I just wanted to say a quick thank you for all the support that the channel has been getting recently. At the time of writing, we're over 1,000 subscribers, which is a number, frankly, that I didn't expect myself to ever get to. I'm just a dude making Minecraft videos in my bedroom. Kinda hard to believe. So thank you all, and thanks for sticking around. Last episode, we really cemented ourselves in medium voltage, managed to upgrade to Canthal coils, and move the blast furnace to its permanent location. Set up the basics of auto crafting with 2 crafting CPUs, semi-automate polyethylene and sulfuric acid, and set up clay electrolysis to get us all of the useful products that it gives us. Today's episode is all about expansion into the second area of the base. We're going to set up auto sieving, but first, let's move our polyethylene and sulfuric acid setup to automation using applied energistics. Okay, so we are here at our wall of production. This is our sulfuric acid production and this is our polyethylene production. And now that we have applied energistics, I think it's time that we actually redo these, automate them, and start storing them in super tanks. Definitely not going to throw away 15 buckets of sulfuric acid, so I might actually put it in a tank. 15 buckets. Alright, so that's our sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide, and sulfuric acid. Then we also have our sodium bisulfate, and then this will be our sodium persulfate production. So the first step is we need to import sulfur, and we also need to input oxygen. Then we need to input more oxygen. Then water. We might not use it. No, we will use an interface for this, that's fine. Then we need to input salt, and this will also make hydrochloric acid as well. So let's configure the covers as well. So we'll need a conveyor for import and a pump for import. Then we'll need another pump for import, then a pump for import, and we can just auto output that. Then we're going to need a pump and a conveyor for import there. And then this will make sodium persulfate and hydrogen, I believe. So no need for anything else. Right, this should let me cover it up now. Perfect. Now that's consistent. And so now all we need to do is power it and allow the interfaces access to the network, and we should be able to get all of this going. So here we're just trying to passive our sulfuric acid and our sodium persulfate. Just some early game automation to make our life easier. That's a good start. The sulfur is being ingested into the chemical reactor. The salt is there as well. And because we don't have any of the fluids in our system yet, we just have to set that up. So there is oxygen in the network now. There is the sulfur. Our sulfuric acid has come through. Oxygen is coming through. It's all ready to go. Now we just have to power it. Alright, it started working. We have sulfur dioxide being produced. Sulfur trioxide's back up and running. And now we have sulfur trioxide backing up. And we'll need to make sure that we import some water. And now we have water in the system as well. And now we've done the same with polyethylene. We have all of it behind facades going into our applied energistics system. So now we should have passive ethylene and polyethylene production. So you saw in the last episode the wiring tunnels underneath here, and this is going to be our centralized fluid storage. We've got a few of our tanks set up now, but we will expand these. Right now we have hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen. And as you can see, our centrifuge is working. We send air into a centrifuge just for oxygen and nitrogen. It's just a simple passive process. And then here we are making sulfuric acid as long as we have oxygen production and sulfur, which we are running low on now, but we'll get to that. But first things first, there's been an update to the pack, and I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the updates. So the biggest change here is that last time I told you that this Slataki recipe is absolutely garbage. That was in episode 1. It's been buffed. So now passiving rubber is actually very easy and very useful. All you have to do is smelt a spore to a slime ball to resin, centrifuge out to raw rubber, and then you react it to get rubber. Always nice to see a modpack creator changing things to make it easier. I'm also aware of the fact that it's been made easier to get to the low voltage machine hull. However, since we're already past that, I'm not able to comment on any of those changes. And I also believe there's been some changes to mystical agriculture, supposedly around this sort of essence burning, but I'm not sure. We'll get to that when we get to it. But let's get back into the video. And so, as I said in the introduction, the Slataki spore recipe has been changed so that we can now passive rubber much more easily. Quick reminder that all we need is witch water and the spores to make another spore, and witch water can be made with mycelial spores and water in a barrel. So all we have to do is make the witch water, and then we make the spores, double smelt them to get sticky resin, centrifuge out to get raw rubber pulp and glue, which is semi-useful, and then chemical react with sulfur to get liquid rubber. And this is a passive process, so we will never run out of rubber. So all this is going to take is 2 barrels and some machines. Okay, so both barrels are done. But we do have a problem now. I am bone dry on medium voltage circuits. I've now encoded the recipe for the integrated circuits as well, and I believe we need 10. And we can see we don't have silver bolts, fine gold wire, and some glue. And that is all we're missing for the circuits. So let's go put this into the network. Alright, and with everything in the system, I should be able to request, let's say, 20 circuits. Beautiful, I can. Let's check that crafting screen. I love it. I don't care that it's slow. This is so nice to see. And really, that's the power of auto crafting. Taking the strain away from you and putting it onto a computer. And so after a little bit of finagling with the circuits and auto crafting being a bit buggy, we finally have our passive rubber set up. It's not quite passive yet because we don't have any sulfur, but once we do have sulfur, we will be able to continuously restock this. But once we do have sulfur, we'll be able to continuously produce rubber. I'm just going to make this look a little bit nicer and tweak some things, and I'll see you shortly. And we're back. A little bit neater, not much has changed, but I'll show you the really important part about this setup. So this large barrel makes us witch water, which gets sent over to make the Slataki spores, double smelted into sticky resin and centrifuged. Now if we just let this auto output into the chemical reactor, we'd have plant balls, rubber pulp, it just wouldn't be the right ratio. So we have a robot arm on keep exact, so only 9 rubber pulp will be in there at any given time. It also leaves space for the sulfur, which we'll import from the bottom. We also have the plant balls and the glue being sent into an interface back to the ME system, which means that we can see plant balls and glue. Alrighty, and so our sieving area is completed, at least the bare bone skeleton is. Eventually it'll look similar to this once we have our auto sieves and place the drawers, but for now, it's going to look like this. And the next step in finishing it is going to be our flux sieves, and you can see they're actually really cheap to make. They don't require any circuits, just an item filter, 4 stainless steel plates, and an aluminium frame. So all we have to do is get some stainless steel and automate the production of those. We get 32 of them, and then we fill it out. Now each section of sieving is dedicated to a single resource. So one of them will be gravel, the next sand, then dust, and then blackstone. We've got multiple areas for priority meshes as well. It's also not listed anywhere in the quest book, but you can actually enchant sieves with efficiency 5 and fortune 3. In my testing, efficiency 5 does speed up the process of sifting through even in the auto sieve, but fortune 3 works best at giving you more rolls at getting a sieve product. The only difficulty, of course, is getting the fortune 3 books. So I believe eventually we'll try and get some fortune 3 books, but for now, we're not really going to worry about it. So let's start mixing up some stainless steel. We need iron, manganese, nickel, and chromium. And I think that should work. Yep, 20 seconds, that looks about right. And it's automatically gone into the system. We've got some stainless steel, so let's smelt it now. And excuse the ugliness, of course. This is just temporary. But we'll get our stainless steel and we'll smelt it. Circuit 2 with nitrogen gives us a 37-second recipe. If I had the right upgrade in the power plant. Yep. Nice. Certainly not a perfect player. And 1.5 hours later, we have the 2 stacks of stainless steel required to make the sieves. And now we assemble. It's going to take 30 seconds each. Of course it is. It's Greg Tech. And so the flux sieves have been placed and we have them onto the storage controllers and into the drawers now. And so we're going to do 2 for the string mesh of gravel because that's iron, copper, sphalerite, other stuff we need. We'll have 2 for the flint mesh and 2 for the iron mesh. And then we'll have the diamond and emerald meshes when we can actually craft those. But for now, we just need to priority set up these ones. These are our main resource generators. And so behind the gravel sifting setup is our cobble works that is going to be powering this entire setup. On this side of the base that I'm standing on is going to be our gravel and our sand. We have our gravel works here. And then we have our sand works here. It's not powered yet, but once it is and once we have it set up, it'll just automatically sift through. So igneous extruder into a forge hammer for gravel, buffered into a drawer. Pretty simple stuff, but very powerful once we get it automated. And so now the gravel side is working, as well as dust processing. Which means on the dust side of things, we have access to sulfur, redstone, ender pearls, glowstone and skystone dust, as well as a huge array of ores in the gravel side of things, most of which provide us with copper, iron, tin, gold, silver, and then further ore processing we can get manganese, chrome, and some other fun stuff. And while we're here, here's a PSA. Buy the jet boots. Seriously, buy them. Creative flight is incredibly useful for building, and they only take power, and as you can see it's only 40 FE per tick, so please buy them. It's so easy and so useful. And now the sand is done. So with all 3 of our basic sieve products now automated, let me show you how I set up these sieves. So we first start in the recipe browser. And we need to look at what recipes we are going to go through. We will use string, flint, and iron. We only have 3 sieve products to go through, 8 sieves, so now we need to pick the priority. Right now, we can't really process all of these, and it's not really worth it yet. So we'll only dedicate 2 sieves to this. The flint mesh, this is where we'll get most of our useful products for the meantime. We can get chlorine from the salts, diamonds, aluminium and oxygen, quartzite and certus quartz we can process for applied energistics. Sapphire is again the same thing. Ruby is the biggest though. That is our source of chrome for the early game. So I think we'll dedicate 4 sieves to the flint mesh. Then we already produce the string mesh products, so we will just use 2 sieves for this. And now we get to work out exactly how many storage drawers we need for these. So our first recipe here, the string mesh, is going to produce 5 products. We can divide that into 2 sets of 2 and 1. So we will need 2 sets of double-decker drawers and then 2 on top for 1, and we'll prioritize diamonds probably. Next up is the flint mesh, which I believe has 12 products, which means we will need 3 drawers of 4. We do not get to prioritize how much we store of these. So there we are, we have our 12 2x2 drawers. And finally, our iron mesh produces 7, so we'll use a 2x2, a 1x2, and a 1x1. There's our 2x2s, there's our 1x1s, and there's our 2x2s. And now the sieving is working away nicely. So now we have our automated sieve products. I do have to say right now, this doesn't do much for us. Unless we were to spam out ore processing factories, we can't do much with this stuff. And to move away from create, we actually have to be in IV for tungsten steel to use the ore processors. But here's where the new update comes in handy. But first, we need to reassess where we are in the quest book and how we can move forwards. So right now, we haven't crafted a single high voltage circuit. We haven't had to. What we're going to do is we're going to unlock all of these circuits, the plastic printed circuit boards that is, create the assembler, the medium circuit assembler, and really set up a high voltage line with lapidary dynamos and the high voltage upgrades. Then we need to make the clean room, which is a real pain, but we're going to make the biggest clean room we can. I just like to have all the space. And then we make the EV circuit. Then we see this beautiful piece of equipment, the multi-block upgrade kit. Reading the description, we can see that you would place it on a high voltage machine to upgrade it to a multi-block. You can't overclock them because they only take one energy hatch, but running at high voltage, they are, I believe, around 70% faster. And the multi-block upgrade kit can be placed onto very specific machines that are going to help us in this. It can get placed onto an ore washer, an electrolyzer, a lathe, a bender as well, a macerator, a mixer, a thermal centrifuge, a wire mill, forming press, extruder, centrifuge, sifter, and a rock crusher. And now, you may have noticed that most of these are actually our ore processing machines. So we can make the large sifter, for example, and we can automatically process our purifieds. That means we're actually going to be able to do ore processing, even though it might be a little bit slower, in high voltage before we move into the Gregicality multi-blocks, which is just wonderful, really. To get the regular ore processing, you need to be in insane voltage and make the alloy blast smelter. It gets pretty challenging, and we're nowhere near that. So to be able to unlock that in high voltage, it's pretty great. So let's start focusing on automating our high voltage machine hulls and our circuits. Let's get to it. Man, I really love AE2. It really is as simple as pressing a button and watching the items flow. Let's just request the circuit. Oh, okay, I guess we are missing some things. The annealed copper bolt and electrum wire. How about now? Alrighty, that's easy. All done. Look at that. Already into high voltage. And now we'll craft the circuit assembler. It really is that simple. But of course, we're missing a conveyor. But Applied Energistics to the rescue, we can just request one. And like that. So with our brand spanking new shiny circuit assembler, let's make the better circuits off the plastic circuit board. First we need to make the low voltage circuit, which we need to be able to create capacitors. Then we want to make the medium voltage circuit, which is going to require capacitors again and fine red alloy wire. Then the high voltage circuit, which will require an inductor, some fine red alloy, which we're already going to make, and capacitor. And there's no point setting the supercomputer yet because this requires the clean room, which I think we may tackle this episode. You'll just have to wait and see. But while we're here, we may as well figure out how we make the capacitor. That's actually easy. We can make that. We just need to be able to make these two as well. We already solidified the polyethylene sheets, which means that thin polyethylene sheets are just as easy as this recipe, and then aluminium foil is also just as easy. Now there are a few different recipes for the inductor. The best one is with the nickel zinc ferrite rings and fine annealed copper. We're probably not going to go with this one just for now. I am a little bit lazy. We'll automate nickel zinc ferrite later. But for now, we'll just use steel rings and fine annealed copper. Then we'll set a recipe for our fine red alloy wire, have our inductor, capacitor, inductor, easy. So let's put these patterns where they need to go. And so hopefully now with all of the patterns in place, we should be able to request the first of these. We can see our plastic circuit board recipe is all ready to go with sulfuric acid, copper foils. All right, let's request it. Right, we've had our first little muck up here. The pattern was only set to 1 millibucket of sulfuric acid. They're not too difficult to work around anyway, so let's just request it again and see how it goes. I think the next one we'll queue up the... Oh, we're missing the red alloy wire. There we are, going through, reassessing. We're missing the red alloy wire, and we're also missing how to craft red alloy. And so there we are, we'll set that pattern as well. And red alloy can go into the alloy smelter, and red alloy wire can go into the wire mill. So we should be able to request the medium voltage circuit. We're missing annealed copper dust. I'm really not having a good day today. There we are, copper dust and redstone. Just make sure you check your patterns, I guess. Okay, now we can actually request it. Don't you think that this little circuit here looks like a dude with glasses on? Please tell me someone else can see that and I'm not just going insane. Now we have the best low voltage tier circuits. Fantastic. Let's get some medium voltage ones just to check. And now we have the medium voltage microprocessor and our high voltage microprocessor assembly. And let's claim all. I love doing this. Bang. 14. It's not like these coins have much use for us anymore, but I mean, they're nice to have. And as is tradition at this point, I think it's time to request 64 of the high voltage motors. This may take a while. Okay, so after making those motors, let's reassess where we are right now. We're currently sitting just past the advanced assembler. We haven't really unlocked the high voltage energy hash yet, but we are getting pretty close. At this point in time, we're circuit capped by not having a clean room. And the clean room's going to let us get the first EV circuit, which is going to unlock our auto crafting potential. So my goal for this next little bit is going to be to unlock the clean room. We're just going to have to automate some concrete, shouldn't be too difficult. And then following that, we'll get our EV circuit, the vacuum freezer, and these multi-block upgrade kits. As I showed last time, we have all of these machines that we want to make. Each one of them takes a different alloy. For instance, the large ore washer takes hydronallium, which I can't imagine what that'll be, but it's going to allow us to not parallelize, but even though this says 5 seconds, these actually take 2 or so. This is going to speed up our ore processing, and we're going to be able to deal with all of these thousands of ores we've been slowly accumulating over the course of the time that I've been playing from our passive sieve setup. And you're probably thinking, well, we do have this electrokinetic ore factory. Why aren't we using that? Well, when you see the word kinetic in things, you might be able to only see this front beautiful little power plant, but behind it is a bunch of water wheels, and I don't really want to have to deal with create stress unit creation just to process ores. And that means going the standard ore processing via GregTech, so with maceration, washing, bathing, thermal centrifuging, regular centrifuging, and with the more complicated ones also smelting and electrolyzing. Pretty similar to last season's ore processing. So let's start making concrete for the clean room. So thanks to our robust infrastructure, to start the clean room, all we have to do is request it. One of the major components of this is plascrete. We can just request 100 now, and we'll let that hum away. And the other major component is the filter casing. So we're going to do a 7x7 interior just to start with, which we'll upgrade later. And that requires 48 because we need the clean room controller in the front. It's a fair amount of materials. These are the more expensive parts, but that's okay. Let's get that going. So now we have 2 big crafts taking up our CPUs. Now we just get to wait. And while that's all been going, I just wanted to show you something really interesting. And by really interesting, of course, I mean really loud. Thank God for the hammer. This is just a water distilling area. We're going to need distilled water for a lot of things, so I figured we should make it early. We've also upgraded our gas production setup here to 3 medium voltage centrifuges. It's still not very fast, but it is better than nothing. And we also have a quad blast furnace set up with all Canthal coils. This took a lot, but it was worth it. Means we can parallelize our blast furnaces smelting to 4 times. Right now it's configured with oxygen on the input hatches, so we are making steel. And I've also gotten around to upgrading our sieves with these gold upgrades. We can have 3 in each sieve, but the way that these have worked in my testing is that when one of these operation goes through, it sieves the maximum amount. So if you were to do 3, it would sieve 8. And it is not 8 individual chances to get the items. You will have the chance to get 8 of the items out of it. So what that means is that when we sieve through 8 pieces of dust here, we have a 5% chance of getting 8 ender pearls, a 40% chance of getting 8 glowstone, sulfur, and dust. And redstone dust. So that's just something to be aware of when you set up an auto sieving setup. And so after another significant amount of time of waiting, we have our clean room. Situated in a perfect spot underneath all of our fluid storage, we have our cozy 7x7 clean room. And by cozy, I mean it's cramped. But the first machine we have in here is our fluid extractor, which is going to extract tin alloy, glowstone, and redstone for all of our current upgrades, and the tin for our circuits. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to make some blue steel for the cutting machine. And now we have our blue steel, which is used for the blue steel buzzsaw. All we have to do is cast that into a gear, and then we take the gear and put it into the lathe to make it into the buzzsaw blade. And now I've got the buzzsaw, and now we can just request all the rest of the ingredients for the advanced cutter. And now the cutter has been crafted and set up. We don't have any lubricant production right now, so we're just going to use distilled water. Slightly slower, but better than nothing. And now with the circuit assembler being placed gently into the clean room being clean as it can be, let's request some EV circuits. And now we should be able to request our first EV circuits. The vacuum freezer takes 3, so let's make 3. There we are, that shouldn't take too long. And just like that, after some more waiting, we have the EV circuit. And I think that officially means we are finally able to start tackling the EV quest page. Most of which is going to be left for next episode, unfortunately for you. But for me, I've still got work to do. Let's get the vacuum freezer. So that's 3 pumps. We need to make some frost-proof aluminium machine casings, which is just aluminium plates in a frame box. And we'll just request 28 of the frost-proof casings. And it should just be made automatically. It's just that easy. Thank you, AutoCrafting. We can now make the controller, using up all of our EV circuits already. And we're all done. We have our pretty blue box that is going to be able to cool down ingots. But with that, I think it's time that we end the episode. We've achieved a lot today. We finally automated our resource production, passived rubber, distilled water, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfuric acid, polyethylene, and sodium persulfate. We've also unlocked the vacuum freezer and put ourselves in good stead to tackle the EV quest page. Next episode, I think we're going to set up some more ore processing and some more AutoCrafting using the new multi-blocks. So if you want to see that and more, make sure you subscribe and tune in next time. Bye bye.